Thanks for joining for this episode of the TechSpective Podcast. I have with me Ariel from Ariel or Ariel from Aryon. So if you want to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background on the company, that would be great.
Yes, sure. So I'm Ariel, not like the Little Mermaid. I am the CTO of Aryon Security. I co-founded Aryon with two amazing partners. Together, we were responsible for transitioning the IDF to the public cloud from the security perspective. So I deeply felt the challenges we faced as a customer, and now Aryon makes the same unique approach that we are going to talk about it accessible and reachable, especially for medium and large enterprises. So I managed a huge group of 20 to 30 cloud security experts. We have an access to any tool. I worked closely with executive from Azure and AWS and GCP on building kind of a new approach for us. And now we're here to make the same approach accessible and reachable for customers. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I just recently wrote about you guys had I don't remember, a Series A funding round. So congratulations on that. But let's talk about what does the Aryon platform do? I'll tee up kind of in a nutshell. Enforces security policies before those changes reach production. Kind of the whole way it was kind of described to me was about, hey, instead of putting out fires after things are in production and causing problems, what if we, proactively solve those things before?
You can come and work with us, Tony, with this accurate description. So let's maybe start with the problem space. So we looked on cloud security today, and despite all the tools, technologies, processes, and etc., we saw that cloud security today is mainly reactive. It means there are great CNAPP or CSPM tools, but all of them do the same. They scan the cloud environments, they find issues, they help with prioritization, but then the organization needs to remediate those issues. And until issues are remediated, the organization is at risk. Just a few months ago, EY, a large enterprise that used one of the best CNAPP tools, they opened for 5 minutes a publicly exposed storage that was also anonymously accessed, so exposed from the internet without any authentication. So it took 5 minutes until 4 terabytes of data were exposed. And this is just one example of many. So this kind of led us to the understanding that something is not working today in the cloud security processes. And when we looked at this cloud security landscape, we just asked ourselves, why wait for all these security gaps to reach production environments and put the cloud at risk? Wouldn't it make most sense to prevent them from ever getting there in the first place? And this is kind of the beginning of our journey. So we help organizations to prevent cloud security risks and enforce their security strategy as part of their cloud environments instead of detecting issues after the fact.
Okay. So that sounds both very logical and also, I don't know, also maybe a little simplistic. Like I think from from day one of cybersecurity, going back 20, 30 years, I feel like the logic that logic has always kind of been there about, hey, what if we, it sort of goes back to the, and I'm going to date myself here because I've been around in cybersecurity long enough to live through these cycles. But when I started in cybersecurity, it was castle and moat. It was perimeter defense. It was, well, I'm going to block the bad things from happening, and then everything in here is safe, and I'm going to block the bad things from happening. And then eventually, we people were like, well, a dedicated threat actor with the right skills and resources is going to get past your perimeter defenses. Like that's kind of a foregone conclusion. There's nothing you can really do to absolutely prevent that. And so then we moved on to detection and response. So we said, okay, well, let's assume they're going to get in, and let's just make sure we detect it as quickly as possible and respond effectively. And then in more recent years, we went beyond that. We said, okay, well, you know what, detection and response, that's maybe not the greatest either. Let's go to resilience. We want to say, you know, now we're going to look at it from the perspective of, well, yes, I want to detect and respond. I want all of the above. I want to prevent what I can prevent. I want to detect and respond as quickly as possible to what I don't prevent. But then beyond that, what I really, really want is to make sure that my business is not disrupted, or that disruption is minimal, and that I have the resilience for not just my cyber systems to continue, but for the business itself on a broader scale to survive the attack and for life to go on. The idea of, hey, well, what if we just fix that before we deploy it? Like, reminds me of when I was working in the cybersecurity trenches, one of my jobs at one point was to do a security assessment of code before it was deployed. So it was again, dating myself. This is pre-DevOps days. This is waterfall development. But so the development cycle was a lot longer. But basically, they once things were like, once the application was built and put together, they'd send it to us, and we'd say, okay, well, here's the security flaws in this, and the idea, in a similar vein to what you described, was, let's try to catch the security flaws before we deploy this application.
It actually makes a lot of sense. We took the preventative approach, the shift left approach, from application security, but built it for cloud security. And when we look on the cloud infrastructure, it's more complex than code. Today, enterprises, they use manual operations through the browser to upload resources, CLI, console, infrastructure as code, even legacy Python or PowerShell scripts to upload resources in the cloud. So we worked very hard to create a preventative approach that works for cloud environments and covers any source from any place, because a true governance or true enforcement is when you can enforce the same rules, the same standards across the entire infrastructure. But you're completely right. We took the approach from application security and how we can prevent things there, and just translated it into an approach that can work for cloud security.
Okay. And I think that makes sense. So, like, what is, so there are obviously a lot of cloud security posture management. There are tools out there where that are explicitly designed for implementing, enforcing cloud policies, and obviously they only work to a certain extent. And I mean, I feel like we can say that about pretty much every cybersecurity tool. It's like they have a goal that they mostly get to, but there's always still a gap, which leads to some other tool. I guess what are you doing differently?
Mm-hmm. So those CSPM tools, or cloud security posture management tools, or CNAPP tools, as I said earlier, they're reactive. They scan the cloud. They have policies, but not preventative policies. So they help you to find those issues. But managing the posture today, especially in the AI era, from our perspective, is too late. It takes a few minutes to a few hours to attack an organization because of a severe misconfiguration. And it takes 24 hours to scan the cloud with those CSPM tools, and then a few hours to weeks to days to remediate those issues. So the idea here is that instead of detecting cloud security issues with those great CSPM tools, let's prevent them at the deployment stage. Because if we prevent something during the deployment, we actually help organizations to create resources securely from the beginning, securely by design. So the uniqueness of our approach is that we don't need to wait for those posture management tools to find alerts. We can eliminate those alerts before they reach the cloud environments.
Okay. What did we've talked about, I think you talked in the intro about the background of you and your co-founders and working on Project Nimbus. And I'm always curious, like what that experience kind of like, how that changed your view of the problem or the solution. Because and I'll tee it up a little bit more by saying that, like, the part that fascinates me is when I'm talking to people who are former IDF, former NSA, former whatever, who have worked in a situation where it's like, especially if they've been on the offensive security side, so it's like they know that they can break into pretty much anything, and now they're starting a cybersecurity company to help companies defend against things, and it's like, okay, but your experience tells you that that's kind of a quixotic expedition, like that somebody will be able to break in. And so I always find it fascinating to see, like, okay, well, what did you see in terms of the problem, the threat landscape that led you to believe that you have a way to solve it?
Actually, this is really interesting because in my first role and position, I actually was in an offensive role. I was part of the national Israeli red team, and we kind of attacked some of the most classified and important systems to improve our defense. And then when I moved to a role that now I am kind of the guy who is responsible for the security of the IDF from the cloud perspective. So, at the beginning, we started with all the cloud security posture management tools. We had more than one and the best ones. And we saw that just like we are just evolving our projects and our journey to the cloud, it was so hard to control and govern the cloud environments. It was so hard to make sure that all those severe misconfigurations, like opening things from the internet, unencrypted resources, weak authentication, all those aspects, it's so hard just to make sure that they're secure and safe, and finding those issues, then remediate them, then finding the same issues again and again and again. This specifically, I think it's the most frustrating experience, to fix something and then find that you have 5 more things like this to fix them again, because in the last week someone did the same mistake. So it led us to the unique approach that let's try to prevent those issues. So we worked with great partners from the cloud providers themselves. Personally, I worked with the team of CJ Moses, the former CISO of AWS, and he just gave us the opportunity to discuss with the cloud providers openly, to request things and approaches, and kind of build this preventative approach and layer. And now this experience led me into a situation that I can actually make a lot of organizations and customers safer, thanks of this partnership and thanks of kind of the experience I had, the frustrating experience of fixing the same issues again and again and again over the time.
Okay. One of the things, I feel like, probably pretty much every single conversation I've had in the last year, maybe even 2 years, has revolved almost entirely around AI. First generative and then agentic, and that is sometimes it's about, well, the defenders have AI tool. I mean, the attackers have AI tools, and so the attacks are getting better. And then it's, well, the defenders have AI tools, and so we can defend better. And then it's, well, okay, but I also need new tools to defend the AI tools that I'm using to defend, to make sure that those don't get compromised. And so there's a multi-layered thing there. But one of my takeaways from all of that is just, okay, but let's make sure whatever conversation we're having about AI, let's make sure that it's applying some sort of unique value to the equation and isn't just AI for the sake of AI. And because AI isn't necessarily the answer to every problem. So in building the Aryon platform, like, what was your take on AI, how to use it, how not to use it?
Cool. So first of all, I really like the approach you described, because today you can hear for 80% of a typical conversation with a vendor, AI, and it becomes so hard to understand what is actually the value there. So I think that if we look on the AI revolution, kind of Aryon has three interesting angles. The first, as I described earlier, attackers today use AI in order to attack organizations faster. And the only way to make sure that we are faster is to eliminate or prevent those security risks. Because even if you have a great detection tools and you cannot remediate automatically things, so there is no time to close things before the attacker will get to it. So this is the first aspect. The second aspect is that our customers use today more and more AI services as part of their cloud environments. And they want to make sure that those AI services are governed as well. So they want to make sure, and we help them to enforce and prevent things like make sure that the AI services are not exposed from the internet. They use strong authentication. They use only specific models or publishers. So for instance, they want only to use OpenAI, and that the data of the AI is not going to be sent outside of the US, for instance.
Right.
So we help them to protect against against a misconfigured AI usage. And regarding how AI helps us, so first of all, we develop faster through AI, we research faster, but honestly, I'm going to be very honest, we use AI only in some specific use cases when it actually enhances the result. But most of our approach is based on the fundamentals of how to make the same detectable issues to something that we can actually prevent and enforce.
Yeah. Well, and I honestly, I think there's a lesson there for everyone. I mean, like there's so many companies out there, and it all reminds me very much of the .com bubble, and I mean the move to the cloud thing and the SaaS apps adoption, those were similar a little bit, but it mostly reminds me of the .com era, where like as the internet took off and the web took off and it became a thing, companies were like didn't have any idea really what the internet was or what the web was. Just were like, all right, well, I'm hearing that the web is the thing, and I guess we need to go buy a domain. So they so you go buy TonyBradley.com, and set up a website, and the website would maybe just be like a static billboard for your company or whatever. But it's like they were getting on the web, but they didn't know why they were getting on the web, and they certainly didn't know how to get on the web effectively, or how to derive value from that. That's the stage I feel like we're at with AI in a lot of cases, where companies that hear the hype, they know that they kind of should be using AI in some way. They're not really sure how or why, but everyone's kind of pushing, or not everyone, but a lot of companies are pushing employees to use AI tools. And then you start to see headlines, and I get that like the headlines only paint the sort of extreme cases. It's like there's a reason that's the headline. But there have been stories recently about companies that allocated AI budget and blew through it in the first quarter of the year, or they get their invoice from Anthropic and find out that it costs 10 times more than an employee to use AI. So there are kind of horror stories of it, and again, there's a reason those make headlines. There's also a lot of useful use cases for it and valid use cases for it, and there are ways that it streamlines things and it acts as a force multiplier for, like, a small team can get more done because they can leverage AI. It really just comes down to the how and the why, like understanding, well, why am I using AI and how can I use it effectively, and not just using AI because it seems trendy.
I agree, and this is the first time I have heard the analogy to the .com bubble. I personally was in the kindergarten during the .com bubble, so I don't remember it, but it sounds interesting for sure.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was very similar pattern of events, and so I think it all levels out eventually. Like the hype cycle will wane, and companies will either figure it out or they won't. I think there are definitely people out there who there are anti-AI people who think it's gonna, when they talk about the AI bubble, they're thinking or hoping that all of AI is going to crash, and I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, when the AI bubble might happen at a financial level, like the valuations might in fact they probably will pop at some point, and people are going to be shocked to wake up and look at their stock portfolios and find out that they're not worth as much as they thought they were. But the concept of AI and the uses of AI aren't going to go anywhere. I mean, we're still going to be using it.
For sure, I truly feel today that the industry values more the kind of the result and the outcome than the way on how you get to it. So if we help our customers to dramatically reduce the number of their new problems, to reduce the risk, to save a lot of remediation time and effort, this is the most important thing for them. And it's more important than how do we achieve this goal. For sure, they want to understand it, and it's important, but kind of if we achieve those important goals, so this is the most valuable thing for them in this partnership.
Okay. Well, anyway, so here's another interesting thing to me about Aryon in particular. When I recently talked with Ron, your co-founder, and we talked about the Aryon platform as it is, and all the things you and I just talked about in terms of like, well, how it relates to, or how it's different from, how it's better than existing sort of cloud security solutions. But the thing I thought was interesting that he kind of like threw out there in the conversation was it is kind of sort of, don't pigeonhole Aryon as a cloud security company. It's the same concept of shift left, the same concept of, hey, what if we fix this problem before it exists, can be extended to other areas. And we talked specifically about identity, as someplace that you guys could theoretically go in the future. So it's like, so for anyone listening to the podcast, watching the podcast, is like, today Aryon is dealing with cloud security, but it would be a mistake to say Aryon is a cloud security company.
Mm-hmm. This is actually very accurate and right. And honestly, we started to hear it from the customers themselves. They told us, okay, prevention or enforcement is more than technological problem. It's an organizational problem. And using Aryon, we were able to achieve a situation that actually most of the cloud security risks are prevented. Now, can we take this approach to more domains? So we have heard that the SaaS, for instance, landscape is very interesting. So make sure that the files that you use in your Office 365 are encrypted, are not publicly shared and exposed, and etc. So the same use cases like in the cloud. Identity is a great example, even on-prem for some of the highly regulated customers that they have. So they kind of very value not only the preventative cloud security policies, but also the approach itself, and want to see us expanding into more domains. And yeah, we're going to do it for sure, because we see the need. Cloud security was the first and one of the biggest use cases, but we're going to take the same approach and translate it to more domains. And when I'm talking about translate it, it's not about the policies or the rules themselves. It's about the entire experience. When we prevent someone from doing something, how is the experience? How they know what is the problem? How they are going to fix it? Can they request exceptions if they need to create something insecurely? So the entire framework is very important to make enforcement something that is reachable and usable.
Okay. this is, you guys are in a position of, being a startup, being a startup, competing against sort of established cloud security solutions in a unique way, that is kind of, it's kind of its own category. And I've worked at companies in years past, and worked with companies in years past that have had to deal with that. And it's a tough place to be, because whether you're trying to talk to analysts, I mean, if you talk to the Forresters and the Gartners of the world, the first thing they want to do is figure out, okay, well, which one of these magic quadrants, which one of these waves do you fit in? And if you don't, that's seen as a detriment. Like, well, and if you try to compete, like if you say, okay, well, we're going to be on the cloud security posture management, magic quadrant. In terms of the outcomes that you achieve, the Aryon solution might be better. It might outperform a lot of the solutions on the market. But because the magic quadrant is defined by criteria that outline cloud security posture management, not the outcome, it ends up reflecting poorly. And again, so I've been at companies where it's like, well, yes, but what if we're doing something better? Like, you're trying to measure me against other solutions and other vendors based on what I consider to be outdated criteria. And what if I'm achieving a as good or better outcome, but doing it in a way that your checklist doesn't measure?
Mm-hmm. If you have right now listeners from Gartner or other experts, so that's good for us. I completely agree. If I need to kind of look on cybersecurity as startups landscape, so we see kind of two types of solutions. The first one, startups that are trying to replace big vendors because the technology is better, or they found a more effective way to do the same approach but better. And the second group is startups like us who innovate and create something that it's new. And when it's new, your biggest competitor is the status quo. So, and this is, but also it creates a huge opportunity for us, because if we are the only ones who can do this preventative approach effectively, so the only thing we need to prove during POCs and POVs is that this approach can be applied to this specific customer. Once we're proved it, the customer continues to a formal partnership with us. So yes, it's a huge challenge, and in a lot of cases, customers ask us about what is your category, who can I compare you with, and etc. We see actually that Gartner specifically, for instance, is going to this direction. They just put a report that in 2026, over 60% of the organizations are willing to prevent cloud misconfigurations instead of detect them after the fact. So we see kind of more enthusiasm about the approach, and I hope that this year, later, or next year, we will create a new category.
Right.
It will help us a lot, but even before, if we actually provide this unique value of 95% of your new alerts are going to be prevented, and the risk reduction that it brings to the table, so organizations work very hard, but they find the budget and they find creative ways to partner with us because of this unique value.
Which I think that's always kind of, it's always true to some extent, is like, if you're doing something that a wave or a magic quadrant does not yet exist for, you basically just have to be good enough they can't ignore you. Because like you talk about, the other part of my statement was going to be like, on the one hand, there's the analyst firms, and the analyst firms are like, well, here's the boxes we have. Which box do you fit in? And then, but because so much of the kind of strategy, thought process, procurement process for customers is based off of those reports and stuff, it's also hard there. Like, so you go into a customer and they've got a line, they have a line item in their budget for cloud security posture management. Now, you might not walk in there feeling like I'm here to replace your CSPM. You're there saying, look, I have a unique solution to this, and here's my thing. And and you're positioning Aryon as a separate, unique thing that isn't necessarily a rip and replace. But the people with the budget are looking at it and saying, okay, but in order to buy your thing, I have to cancel out one of these other things, and so I need to figure out which box do you fit in. And so everyone's always trying to fit you into a pre-existing box in some way, and you have to be good enough to successfully make the case for, hey, I don't really fit into one of your boxes, but what I'm offering is worth you reworking your budget to fit it in.
Exactly. If because of the overhead of working with a new vendor and even a startup that it can be, today we have customers from most of the industries: finance, healthcare, insurance, manufacturing, oil and gas, delivery, etc., shipping. But in the first days, it was a huge challenge. So for sure, the most important things is to be not just good enough, but even excellent, to help those organizations to actually overcome these challenges. One of our first customers was an American bank. And imagine what is for a bank to install a new vendor, a new product, and etc. But because of the pain was so big, so they did this step, and now they are very satisfied, and they help us to bring more customers and be great references. But yes, I completely agree with it. And this is why, and this is part of the things that actually customers can benefit. So when you work with startups, you are a top priority. You get the most innovative approach, and it's important for the startup, or at least for us. I don't want to talk about all the startups, but it's important for us to make sure that our customers achieve the goals we aim to achieve. If we have a customer that don't use the product at all, so maybe for a corporate it's fine if they pay. For us, it's terrible. I want to make sure that our customers are the best ambassadors of our unique approach. So they benefit a lot from it as well.
Well, and I think when for startups, for young companies, it's like, not every customer is a design partner, but like you want that feedback loop. It's like, I mean, hopefully your product is great out of the box, but you still want your customers to give you some feedback about, okay, well, yeah, we really love this. This part's not working so great. It would be awesome if you could change this part of the user experience. And not to say that you're acting as a short order cook and you just do what you're told by customers, but it's valuable feedback for you to take in from multiple customers and say, hey, we've got 100 customers and 35 of them have told us that we need to change the way this is in the system because it's confusing. And it's like, that's good feedback. You need that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. The feedback from the early customers shape the product in a lot of ways. For instance, I will give you just a quick example. We started with a focus of a marketplace of a lot of policies that you can apply and enforce. And then we saw that it's not convenient enough for customers. Customers, they don't think about any single policy. They think about concepts, about approaches. For instance, I don't want that my cloud is going to be accessed from the entire internet. So Aryon today translates these high-level goals into a list of actionable policies that you manage together, and we call it initiatives. So the idea is that we help our customers to manage those list of policies with the same purpose. So this is just an example for something that was very important for our first early customers. And when we understood how they think about things, we immediately changed what is the focus of the product. And now it takes sometimes for our customers 2 to 3 weeks to build a good coverage of preventing things, because it's not 200 single policies. It's 5 to 10 initiatives that I'm going to enforce together.
All right. Well, as we sort of went on, I will say, like when this episode is published, in the text, I will have, links to the site, links to whatever. But for anyone listening who doesn't want to go read that, like, what would you suggest as next steps? Like, where can they learn more? Where, what should they do?
Cool. So first of all, we have our website, and I hope that in the website they will find more interesting information. And I'm eager. I'm still taking meetings and first calls because it's important to me to be close to the market and hear the needs, hear the pains, and then improve the product. So anyone who just want to discuss and see more how exactly the preventive approach looks like, what is the unique experience that we provide, because it's a completely different experience. So this is something we show from the beginning. By the way, we decided to be very unconservative. We very fast jump to the demo, and not because we want to talk about technical parts, because we want to show very fast how the experience of preventing something looks like. Because after we present it and we see that the other side is excited or curious, we build the entire conversation together.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me, and I wish you great success. We'll have you back on in another 6 months or whatever. We'll see how things are panning out.
Sounds incredible. Thank you very much, Tony.
Take care.